Evening, everybody. It's been a difficult couple of days. Ballyburn, is he going to the Morgiana? Is he going chasing? Constitution Hill, is he still the same horse he was? Who knows? There's been a lot going on. Hopefully we can get away from that and just talk about day-to-day punting. That is what this video is about. Firstly, thank you so much to everybody who tuned in to myself and Paul Beck as we went through all of the big AntePost races for the rest of 2024. Hopefully there's a few winners in there. If you haven't seen that, then please go and check it out on this channel. Like every channel you'll ever go on YouTube, I'm going to have to be one of those guys and ask you to like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. But yeah, hopefully this will be of some value to somebody. So very much what I'm trying to do, this is only going to be a short video. I will not keep you for very long, but it's around my punting, the way in which I bet, and hopefully just to give you a little bit of insight behind the curtain. Now, I don't feel accountable to anybody. Well, no, that's a lie. I do feel accountable. I feel accountable to everybody that I suggest a bet to, even though I'm not a tipster who is on a paid-for platform or requests any sort of subscription fees. But it still is just as satisfying putting up a winner for somebody else as it is winning the money yourself. From my perspective, that's what I believe, and that's genuinely how I feel. So what I want to do is just give you a bit of an insight into my punting and kind of what dictates the selection for me, how I currently track my own bets themselves, and what sort of criteria each horse has to meet in order for it to allow to be a bet. And maybe there might just be a couple of nuggets in here that you can take away yourself and implement into your own sort of betting strategy. I wouldn't advocate for anybody following any one tipster or any one punter. I think there's a huge amount of great information out there. So hopefully this can just help and assist other people not to be sheep, essentially, and to be able to just provide them with some sort of formula to be able to form their own opinion around a race or around a particular horse. So we'll get straight into it. I'm going to do a bit of a screen share and just show you some of the detail and information that I keep hold of just to track my own selections and what I'm doing when I'm actually tipping horses as well for AntePost Angle, whether you're following me on X or whether you're following me as part of the Telegram group. And hopefully this will give you a bit of an insight. So now I know this looks like a lot of words, letters, numbers and colours, but I'll give you an insight to it. So this is something I only started tracking in August, but it's because I wanted to be sure that I was beating SP consistently and that I was accumulatively over time getting value. Now, I am probably different to somebody, for example, like Johnny Deneen, who would play very much at the top of the market. Now, that's no slight on Johnny. He will have more money pass through his hands from this game than I will ever see in my lifetime, I can assure you. So it's not a dig at him. But for me, I find the value in the way that I make the game pay is towards the bottom of the market. For example, those of you that followed this weekend, Saturday at Cheltenham, extremely poor. Sunday was not fantastic, let's be honest. But Mars Harper at 100 to 1 managed to grab a place. And that's essentially a 19-20 to 1 winner. So that therefore meant we were in profit for the weekend, although there were numerous selections that ran poorly. Anyhow, back to the spreadsheet and just what I'm trying to show you here. I suppose it's just to give you an insight as to what I'm doing and what I'm tracking of myself to try and improve me as a punter, and secondly, to improve me as a tipster. So as you can see here, 18th to the 8th. So obviously the date is self-explanatory. It's the date of which the horse was either tipped or ran. And in the main, it's what is the date that that horse ran. Then Dream Composer, for example, which going along this the top row 6, Dream Composer is the horse that was selected. Profit or loss. At this stage within this particular spreadsheet, I do not care whether it won or placed. I just want to know whether it's profitable or whether it's a loser, because in terms of my overall profitability, it's tracked in a separate spreadsheet, and secondly, it's tracked on a third-party website for everyone to access for complete transparency over on OLBG. So if anybody wants to challenge me at any given time on any selection I've made, it is easily recordable that the world can essentially see. Therefore, the next column along, column F, is the price it was tipped at. Then it's the price it SP'd at. Now, I appreciate you're going to have to bear with me to make the maths easy. I know that decimal point odds, this would represent 7 to 1. It's not. It's 8 to 1. I've forgone the additional point that you would consider that you bet when it comes to decimals, just to make the maths far easier for me and take a little bit of the work out. The SP and then the price differential. So if it's green, therefore, obviously the difference between 6.5, the price it SP'd at, and the price it went off at is 1.5 points difference. And then over time, what I'm trying to achieve is an accumulative differential. So these are added. So this is, I beat the SP there by 1.5 points. I beat the SP there by 4 points. Add them together, 5.5. 1.5 plus 4 is obviously 5.5. There, I didn't beat the SP, nor there. Then another 4 points, and so on. And then what I'm trying to do over the course of time is ensure that that figure continually increases and continually remains in the green. Now, given the fact that I actually tip big prices and sometimes silly big prices, like I did on the weekend, as just mentioned, Mars Harper, that means that sometimes you can take a massive hit, which really skews the figures, but it's part and parcel of the game. You can see here, for example, a horse that was tipped. Some of you may recall a lot of these names from horses that we've punted previously, been following for a while. Sol KO, tipped at 33 to 1, went off at 66s. So as you can see, the price differentials above and below it are quite small comparative to that. 33s. There's actually a worse one down here, which is a better representation, which is Sister Lola over at Dundalk. I still remember it now. There we are, 64-point differential. So what I'm trying to do here, and the day before we had a nice winner actually, at 14s. Anyhow, that's by the by. Sister Lola, so there, that really skews the figures. That's so obviously we've gone from being 88 points ahead accumulatively in terms of getting value, and then smashed down. So what I'm trying to do is just ensure that I'm getting value consistently enough, because if I'm not getting value consistently enough, then there's no point in punting or offering selections, to be perfectly honest. It is the way that I see it. Now, many others might think that that is daft and they play the game differently. And they may think that finding winners is the be all and end all. But in the great words of Barney Curley, if you don't get the value, then you're dead. And I'm very much, I believe that I am better at identifying value at the bottom of the card. What I then do from there, as you'll see, as we move along these tabs, so we take Dream Composer, the horse that we first mentioned. So this is almost my starting point for identifying, is a bet or not. So before I've even done a write-up, a video or anything, these are the considerations that I take into account. Now, there will be greater and more considerations outside of this, but this is just a starting point and an easy way for me to identify as to whether what I believe and what I'm seeing with my own eyes, when I then relate it back to this kind of tick sheet, as to whether I'm being an idiot or blinded by perhaps, I don't know, the love of a particular horse. We've all got them, cliff horses that we follow, which we can come on to shortly. Walkaway Harry's in here, although I did promise all subscribers would never speak his name again, but he is within this document, which again, he's just a horse that I just had unbelievable belief in and just continually thought he's well handicapped. And here we are now. We've gone from him being tipped by myself for the Albert Bartlett at 66s, and now we're still waiting for him to win as a maiden. Bless him, off about 110. Anyhow, back to my original point. This is my starting point as to whether a horse, to identify, to make sure that the actual figures themselves marry up, as opposed to me being blinded by a horse that I have any emotional attachment to, a horse that I believe is really well handicapped, without actually digging in and looking into the form, a horse's name that might just be familiar. And look, this is just a way to maintain my own discipline. So Dream Composer, I then identify, right, what was this horse, what have I tipped it at, or what am I willing to back it at? It's 8 to 1. Okay. Now, what is the horse's win probability off the back of that? So the horse's actual probability chance of winning is basically 1 in 10. So when you're tipping an 8-1 horse or backing one, I think it's something to consider whether you're beating yourself up for putting a tip up, whether you're beating yourself up for putting your money on a horse that's 8-1. It has less than a 1 in 10 chance of actually winning. And I think this is where the value comes in. So what you want to be able to do is identify you want that win probability to significantly increase. It's increased here slightly, so the actual win probability of the horse's actual odds at SP was slightly greater. The price differential is obviously highlighted in green, as is the additional win probability. So I want these figures, these two figures, to constantly be green. But even prior to that, obviously, because this has been identified as a selection, is I want to take it through essentially my tick list. So off its current handicap mark, does this horse have a chance? Yes, it evidently does. I wish I could share the comments with you, but it's something I've just green ticked straight away. I'm sure if we went back and looked, we'll see that this horse is below his current winning mark on the given date that he actually won this race. Last winning handicap mark, current form, course, distance. So yes, it's won over this course, it's won over the distance. Track direction, I'm assuming this is over 5 or 6 furlongs, so therefore it'd just be a straight 5 or 6. Track direction was non-applicable. It generally wouldn't be applicable unless it's somewhere like Chester, perhaps York, Ascot, or certainly the reason that's included is far more for the winter months for the jump season. Does he have form on the current ground conditions, trainer form, jockey selected, and so on? And then obviously I have noted some notes in here. So at the current time of tipping or selection of this horse, the trainer had a 33% strike rate. However, I have noted that is actually a small sample size. So he'd only had 3 runners in the last 14 days. So obviously he must have had 3 winners from 9 runners. Similarly with the jockey, he was operating at 29% strike rate. He was obviously taken off a few bounds as a conditional, claimed off the 5, and given the fact that he was obviously a very good jockey, again, I should probably document a little bit more info here as to who the jockey was. Not that that will probably be relevant anyhow in 12 months' time, because he'll probably have forgone his conditional status. But this is just to give you a bit of an idea, I suppose. There'll be a few other horses in here that a few of you will recall. Walkway Harry just mentioned. We will just scoot straight past him because, look, I don't want to cry. Al Nair. So a horse that I still chose to tip. Still should have won, in my opinion. But again, we didn't get the value. So this is what I actually become frustrated when this occurs. So he goes down in the red column across everything on the former sheet that we saw, because we didn't get the value. The price differential was huge. We didn't get him at the top price in the market, and he placed. So he still delivered a return, which I find slightly frustrating, because obviously what I'm trying to find is the value, not just horses that will place or get us any sort of return. So in short, that's just to give you a little bit of an insight. Look, if anybody wants this information, you're more than welcome to it. Perhaps this would be a good example. It is a winner that we had at 25s in actual fact. Some of you may recall this was on the flat. This is when we were having a real barren time of it, to be perfectly honest. So that was backed into 16s. So again, we got the value. He was well handicapped. He won on the all-weather off a lower mark, but never won on turf. He was 3rd last time out, so he'd evidently come into form. He'd placed at Naas before, so he had course form. He's won at the 5 furlong distance at the all-weather, so therefore the distance lent itself well to this race. He has performed on the current going conditions of that given day. And the trainer was banging form. He'd had a 25% strike rate in the last 14 days. But again, I've noted that is only 4 runners. So he's had 1 winner from 4. There was a claimer on board taking off 5, which actually meant that he was going to be off a lower mark than his last winning mark on the all-weather. But anyhow, what that was hoping to do was just give you a bit of an insight as to the kind of stuff that I do around statistics and things like that. I could probably track it better than I do to a degree. But again, as I've mentioned, there's a lot more for me to do day to day, obviously, with having to actually work as well as try and be accountable for this. And I do feel accountable every time I put a tip up. And when a horse runs really poorly, like a few did over the course of the weekend, it bothers me. It bothers me that it's stung my own pocket, but it certainly bothers me that it's stung others that I've advised those bets to. But I hope that gives people a little bit, as I say, of an insight. And if anybody wants kind of the sheets that I've created, I'm more than happy to send exactly what I've got in terms of Excel if anybody wants to use that for themselves. But I think this sort of thing that's been done by the likes of Dave over at Chelt Mental is really useful. And I think it's important to be accountable, whether it's you're just being accountable to yourself and you're not following a particular tipster, but it also provides you an opportunity then to improve. So if I want to dive deeper into those spreadsheets themselves, I could then look at them and consider, well, actually, I can choose horses from prices 5 to 1 to 12 to 1, and it shows my strike rate is so much greater. So maybe if I actually focus around races where I fancy horses within those kind of price brackets, therefore, I'll actually produce a lot more profit. So there's loads of ways to then break down that data that's in there, but I think it's useful to keep hold of. People may suggest, well, what's the point? You just know when there's enough money in your bank account. You're either winning or you're not based on your bank account. Well, yeah, but then you don't know how you can win more. You don't understand where you're going wrong. You don't understand where you're losing money and where you should actually be reinvesting and redirecting your efforts, energies, and so on. But first and foremost, it was just for me. I think I've banged on and on about transparency since I started AntePost Angle. And that's what I wanted to provide to anybody who's following me on X, anybody who's following me over in the free Telegram group, which are all more than happy to join. The link is in the bio over on Twitter itself. But transparency is key, and that's what I wanted to provide. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as to what I'm doing even before I'm tipping horses anyhow, and just provides a little bit more transparency to people. I would really appreciate if people did like and subscribe. A little plug from the new venture we've got going on. Andrew Halligan, of course, of Andrew Halligan Racing, and also the founder of the Finishing Line. Myself, he, and Jack from Racing Interest. I've started the watch along. A few of you may have tuned in to the watch along Breeders' Cup that we did as a little bit of a trial, and found that A, it was way too long. B, Friday evenings are probably not a good idea because we all have a few too many to drink. But secondly, that there probably is a little bit of a new concept that we can devise there. So it's reduced to around about 2 hours, 2.5 hours max. It's the core ITV racing schedule. And we're hoping that we can bring a voice to the punter. We won't be shy in coming forward, and we'd really like anybody to get involved and subscribe. The first one goes out this Saturday. We're also then following up the day after this Sunday for the John Durkin. You can find that channel if you type into YouTube at RTC-watchalong. You'll be able to find our channel over there, or if not, head over to my socials. And it's all over my profile page. But yeah, I hope that a few people found this informative, or to any sort of degree educational or helpful. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. For those of you that have, and I hope to see many of you on Saturday for the first series of the watch along.